Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details. Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details. Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Another episode of the Unlaced podcast. Thank you for tuning in. If you are new here, please give us a like and subscribe. It's how we grow. And if you come back, as I always say, I absolutely love you. Now, last week we did a Christmas special with a couple of my best mates. One of the loosest but also funniest episodes that was quite wholesome for this time of year. So go back and check that out. Tell your mates you love them. That was sort of the mantra of the episode, which hopefully you guys enjoyed. Now, I speak about it all the time. I'm a football person. I love my football. We have tried to get this special human being on a couple of times. And as we spoke before the podcast, it's probably worked in our favour that it's happened at this time. But our last episode of the year, and I'm very delighted to introduce Matthew Leckie.
Thanks for having me, mate.
How are you, bro?
Good.
What's going on?
Not much. Just straight back into it, back at City. So, yeah.
Do you have a breather at all?
I didn't this time. Obviously, after the other World Cups, we've had a bit of a holiday after, but circumstances of having it in the end of the year, it was just straight into it.
Do you think like with the way the World Cup was this year, the quality of football was better because less people had played 50, 60 game seasons, particularly like your experiences in Europe? You could probably relate those sort of big camps after the big seasons and then the tournaments. Do you think the quality of football was higher, or did it not make a difference?
Yeah, I think from what I saw for most of the games, it was quite entertaining from both teams. There was a lot of high-scoring games, and it just seemed more attacking. Being in Russia last time, there was a lot of games where there was not much going on. So, I mean, there was positives and negatives to this World Cup. Obviously, we had a fair few injuries of like superstars of the game, so there was a lot of great players missing at this World Cup. But yeah, I think from the footballing side, it seemed to be at a higher quality,
Yeah, definitely. Now, before we go into the World Cup, because I know everyone at home is going to want to listen and speak about some of Lex's experiences and Qatar in general, the whole tournament and so forth, but we have a bit of beef to pick because I don't know if you know, but I signed for Adelaide when you left, and sort of I was deemed a young, good player at the time. So they said, well, Jake, you're coming in, you're going to take number 19 because that was like the young, good player number. Little did I know that you tore up Hindmarsh at the time for like 2 years straight. So then I had this weight on my back of like, I play 7 out of 10. Oh, he's not as good as Leckie. I'm like, I'm a centre mid. Like this guy was dancing up and down the field. So for like 2 years, I kept copping this shit that I'm like not as good as Leckie. I don't think you have any idea about this, but like, I fucking was on like everywhere I went. It's like, oh yeah, your number, Leckie wore that number, like this or that. I'm like, fuck me.
Crazy.
Yeah, crazy, huh?
It is.
Yeah.
I was only there for a short time, and obviously I was just young and a raw player. So obviously most of the things I did when I did get the ball, it was exciting to see. And yeah, I just was there for 2 years. I think the second year I was mainly injured for most of the season, but I don't know what your time was like. If you're getting all that.
No, I had a good time. I had a good time.
Yeah,
it's just, I mean, at the time, you were like a one-pace player. It was like 0 to 100 all the time, that stood out in that period of the A-League. Like a lot of fast attacking young players coming through, getting a lot of recognition, even still to this day, because it's exciting to watch. But I was like more of a technical midfielder, so worlds apart. But they gave me the number 19. I'm like, I didn't even know what I was walking into. I was like, yeah, I'll wear that. Like, whatever. And then the next 2 years was just this Leckie comparison. I'm like, fuck me, now we meet. That was a part of my demise, Braden. I think I only lasted 2 years and I ended up retiring. So maybe we can blame Lex. But one of the things that's pretty amazing to me, because I think we've grown up, like how old are you now? 31. So I'm 29. So we grew up in the same year, but being the most capped Socceroo at the World Cup, like especially when you're growing up in the year we've grown up in where we watched the 06 generation and so forth, like is that something you have thought about or has hit you yet, or is that just kind of breezed your mind because you're still you've come straight back into playing for Melbourne City?
Yeah, it's obviously good that I've, made that many appearances. I think, I just really haven't thought about it.
Yeah, I don't think you've
I've had
got it.
I had an interview like last week, and it was the same. I just said getting into the national team is one thing, and then I always thought to myself, like, every game I have to perform to stay, because I've been there for so long now. I've seen players come in, do well, and then sort of have a moment of not playing so well, and then you don't see him for a while. So for me, the key was always just to try to play my best every game to make sure I didn't give any reason to be out of it. And yeah, I don't even know what year, when Ange took over, I think it was 2013.
Yeah,
just before the World Cup.
Yep.
So basically since then I've been a regular. So yeah, it's nice. I mean, it's one of those things I'll look back on when I've, stopped national team or just retired in total. But I'm not really one to dwell on like achievements and stuff. It's just, it's cool, but is what it is.
Man, that's the most laid back answer. He's the most capped soccer at a World Cup, right? The biggest tournament in the world. he's literally spoken a fag as he's answered that with like the most laid back tone. I absolutely love it. How for you to like take away the football stuff? Like, how was just the overall experience? Obviously, you've been to two already through your third World Cup, but just being at a World Cup, the frenetic nature of the fans, the all eyes on sort of every game. What was that like this time around?
Yeah, it was good, and we didn't know what to expect going into Qatar. There was obviously a lot of criticism, so it was a bit of an unknown for us as well. And I arrived at like 3:30 in the morning. Airport was empty. Driving to the hotel, or like the complex we stayed at, it was empty as well. So I was just like, well, it doesn't really feel like a World Cup, really.
Yeah.
And I've always said, as a player, you're never really going to experience a World Cup as a fan would, because we're basically in a bubble the whole campaign.
Yeah.
And the only time you really get the buzz of a World Cup is when, the games start and you get to the stadium. And I think the coolest thing about a World Cup is there's obviously most of the time sort of a split 50-50 or 60-40, what I want to say, from the nations. Obviously, playing against Peru in the knockout game, and the majority of the South American teams, they sort of dominate the stadium. I don't know how they get so many in. So
yeah,
they got something with the tickets. But yeah, the game against Argentina, there's just so many of them, and they obviously live and breathe football. So
yeah,
but we had a decent amount of fans, Aussies, and yeah, it's just cool. I think that's the big part of it, is when you're at the game, and then the rest is just like really being in another camp, because you're just away from everything. Do
you feel when the game started, do you feel not the pressure, or just like that you're in that World Cup game, or is it kind of, because as a player, the mentality, I can imagine the build up so different and so forth, but when you're in it, does it just feel like another game, or do you kind of capture that this is bigger than your average sort of experience?
I think in this World Cup specifically, leading up to the very first game, there was a bit more nerves maybe, or thought over the day. We played a late game. That was a 10 p.m. kickoff. So there was a bit of nerves leading up, but I don't know what it is. I think I always enjoyed playing in those type of games. Always when there's like a full stadium, I always just, thrive off it. And I'd much rather that, sometimes when you're playing in pre-season and there's a friendly and you got a couple of hundred, it's really hard to get going or to even play well. I've just always thought like play my game, because I said it to the boys when we were in camp. We sort of had a team get together before the start of this tournament, and it was about, just a few of us speaking, and then if anyone else had anything to say, just amongst us players. And my thing was, you're here for a reason. It's what you've been doing all the way up until now. And I really believe that players perform to their best and play their best when they're happy and just confident and just do their thing. So sometimes pressure is, you can't control it, but I've always just tried to steer clear of it. And I think the mentality and the type of person I am sort of pretty laid back.
Oh, I'd love to play with you in a World Cup because, man, this guy's so chill. I'd be like, all right, I feel like I could relax a bit. But that's important. You know, people don't understand that. Like sometimes if you wire it the other way, the moment can get to you.
So 100%. And I think it's in every footballer has a phase of, having good moments and bad moments. It's just how you take the bad moments. And sometimes the bad moments for some players is like sent them to like a really bad place and they just never reached a level they had. So, I think as emotional and football is, I think I've always just also had that in the back of my mind. It's just a game and you got to enjoy it. Because if you're not confident and you don't enjoy it, then you never play well. You never do. So it's just, trying to get the balance.
What was the sort of initial feeling when you saw France' first game? Obviously, the experience in 2018, we probably went one of the closest to gaining a point off them or, clawing that game in. I don't know how Pogba's goal went in, I think, when he lobbed Maddie or whatever. But that first game, that was obviously a pretty critical game. Everyone always talks about the first game of the World Cup. What was sort of the mentality going in? They were, you look at that squad, it was stacked. And even the players that didn't make the World Cup is pretty scary in itself.
Yeah, well, we always knew what we're coming up against. It's one of the best national teams in the world. And they showed it again by, they basically could have won the final. So those types of things, you just take it and, we don't really have anything to lose. All we can do is, shock the world and do something that no one expects. So there's no real pressure on us. And another thing I said to the boys was, it's no different to let's say at club level now we play against a friendly against an MPL side or whatever it may be. If I was in Germany and you play the cup and the first rounds against the fourth division, it's not easy because they're going to come out, they're going to be aggressive, they're going to kick you, and no one likes it.
It's the worst games to play.
Normally the big players, they hate it. So
yep.
I said to them, we just got to get in their faces. And I think it was quite clear why we had our success was the mentality and the physicality we brought to games. There was no one. We're a team that has to be good collective. We can't have one or two players not defending, walking. It really had to be a collective. And I think every game we did that. And the France one was almost like a bit of a learning curve for us. We didn't have any friendlies leading up to this one because obviously different circumstances, but it was a learning experience for us to, go into those next two games. And I think the turning point was, or the good thing that was that, Arnie said straight away, I don't want any negativity. There's still 6 points to play and, be positive. And, ironically, we ended up getting the 6 points and it worked out exactly as he said. So, on another circumstance, if, the coach or the players react in a different way, we don't, the tournament's over there and then after first game because it's very easy to get negative and just think it's over. But, everyone stayed strong mentally and still thought we had a chance and you knew that there was still 6 points to play and, yeah.
I think that's what Arnie said after the game. It was the best friendly that you guys could have asked for, which I thought was a really interesting comment because it wasn't like doom or gloom. And it was like, it really kind of gave a bit of the tournament mentality that is probably a bit more unique to like league football or domestic football with sort of, because you're quite experienced now with playing at a lot of tournaments at the highest level. Is there a difference in that sort of camaraderie and mentality that you have to focus on versus sort of the week-to-week stuff with the club? Because you guys, as you mentioned, you're in a bubble. You're kind of always with each other on the good and the bad stuff. Like you can't really avoid each other in the hotel rooms. You got team meetings, physio, dinners, all that sort of stuff. Do you find that stuff's really critical?
Yeah, but I think, for majority of the players, they've been around for so long and been around it. So we know how it is. Also with the bubbles, like a bubble's obviously a different circumstance to a World Cup to a normal camp, but post-COVID, we had bubbles then. So it was, we had experienced it before. And, one of the best things or the good things about the national team is, the group is so good. Like together, we're really close. There's no real players with egos and no one in there to cause dramas. And I think Arnie's set up a good culture, and I'm not saying he's picked his players based on that, but all the boys know what's required and how we need to play, because we know we're not individually better than a lot of the players. We go against France, we know we're not better than them, but if we're a better team, then we have a chance. So, Denmark's, I think, I don't even know if I've heard they were in the top 10, maybe 9th ranked or something.
Yeah, I think, do you think people, and we're going to talk about that game because it's life-changing for some, but like, do you think people in Australia, I think people in Australia, when we got the group, I always had thought Denmark's our most important game because of, like, maybe people don't know their names, but if you look at where they play in the world, like that starting 11 is as lethal as any team going around. And they're like one of the best teams in Europe. Do you think people back home really knew how good they were? Like, do you think you guys got enough credit for not just beating them, but in the actual occasion of what it was too?
Yeah, I think depends on the person, I guess. People that really have a knowledge for football would understand it, and I'm sure they would follow, knowing that they're in the top 10 in the World Cup rankings. They would know. But yeah, that's another team that is a good team. They do have good players and a couple of stars, or a few stars that people know more than others, but it just shows like what a team can do. And, I think they beat France.
Yeah, they did.
Nations League, is it?
They did, yeah, that's right.
And they've won a few games to get into that position. So that's the same for us. We know that those teams are probably, like, those individuals on paper are better than us, but the chance we have to beat them is based on how we do as a team. And the output that everyone put on for those games, like, it was tough because we're backing up games, but everyone was just on.
Yeah,
like, it was just that, like, it doesn't matter if you feel like shit.
It was awesome.
It doesn't matter if you're tired, just go. And I really think most of the games we physically beat the opposition. Yeah,
it seemed like Arnie almost picked a squad. Like, I think Arnie's so smart, and I don't think he gets enough credit because he obviously left some stars out, and then key players like Martin Boyle and stuff got injured in the lead up. But it felt like he picked a team that was there to run and also play for each other and all those sorts of things, but also ones that were fit, like playing week to week. Didn't have to be for Manchester United. It could have been, Hibs or Hearts or St Mirren. I think a few of the boys that got in from, but they were playing every week, so you couldn't question fitness and mentality and stuff, which I thought was really smart. But when you guys, obviously, you got through the Tunisia game, and then we're coming up against Denmark. I think naturally everyone thought France were going to beat Tunisia, so a point would suffice. What was sort of the thinking there? Because I can imagine, in a sense, you're kind of seeing half the situation. You're almost out of the group, but it's a massive game against a massive nation. How was the sort of build-up going into that?
The build-up was, I think, when Arnie speaks, he always says we go out to win a game, and it's true. We don't really change the way we play. We don't go more defensive because it's always dangerous. I think the Olympic team going to their third game needed a draw to go through, and ended up losing 2-0. How they went into that game, I'm not sure, but we obviously expected, or we thought, okay, France will win, but there was the point put up that they will change, like, make a lot of rotations. We thought Mbappe would play because he would want to, score the golden boot. And funny enough, we had no idea, like, their scenario in their game, and we were just playing, and supposedly the score came up on the big screen.
Oh, really?
I didn't know. I don't know.
Did players see it though?
I don't know if any players saw it,
okay.
But when we scored, I think it was 2 minutes after they had scored, and I think someone from the bench told Miloš we were losing. They were losing, France, so we had to win. And
trust Miloš to
Miloš
find
has
that.
come running over to the group, saying, "Boys, Tunisia's winning 1-0. We need to win this." So that's scored, but let's
vital
go.
Info.
And Miloš, being the guy he is, half the team didn't believe him. They thought he was just trying to
because that's what he's like.
Yeah. And not until the end of the game, we actually knew he was telling the truth.
Imagine that.
So we thought he was just trying to, make sure we're on it.
Miloš.
And no one believed him, or whoever, the players that actually heard him didn't really believe him. So, yeah, it was funny.
It's pretty unbelievable in a sense, like Tunisia beating France in a game like that. But just before we go into your sort of brilliance in the Denmark game, just want to get a gauge of like from being up close to Mbappe and how lethal he was, or what sort of maybe, because everyone knows he's great, but what up close for you was like the most sort of notable thing that stood out about how good he is?
I mean, for he's a left wing, or he's a winger. He's fairly tall. He's really quite tall.
Really?
Yeah, very long legs, and he doesn't look lanky, but he's quite tall. And I think the biggest weapon he has is his first few meters off the mark. And it's funny because I knew in the game the sort of like movements he likes to do. He likes to cut inside, and he always like does a fake shot.
Yeah, and comes back on his left.
But sometimes he does it like it looks so much that he's going to shoot that you still think he's going to shoot, and then he still does chop. He's just dangerous, and he has like such good moments. So obviously in that game we started off well, and it was quite good in the first half an hour, but they set their team up like he's a player that sort of chills a bit, waits for the ball, and then he's ready to go. And you know, it's nice for him, I guess, to be able to do that. But yeah, you know, he obviously's got all the energy in the world when he gets the ball, and he's just really fast, of course. So,
did you play any side that game?
Yeah, I did.
Because who was was it Atkinson? Was that
Atkinson was up against him? Yeah. And to be fair, like from the majority, I thought we did all right. You know, he was getting a few crosses in here and there, but it wasn't like he was having any clear cut chances. Yeah, I mean, you see what he does, so it's hard to explain. But yeah, his first few meters, because his legs are so long, he's so quick, and
that's coming from you too, because I don't know about now, but definitely when you had that was like your game too.
Yeah, I think now, like, I've still got my speed, but I'm just probably not as fast off the mark.
Yeah.
I don't know, like even that, like just being out there, of course, sitting like playing against Mbappe, but I didn't really think about it or care.
Yeah, you don't strike me as someone that does care.
You just got to go for it.
You know what? Speaking of like your change of speed and all that sort of stuff, like question whether you dropped a yard in your first few steps or not, but the Denmark goal, that was the Matthew Leckie of old in a sense, or the Matthew Leckie of new, depending. But I actually, and look, I know you're a pretty humble guy, but I think if Lionel Messi or Mbappe had scored that goal, it would be spoken about much more, because I actually think it was one of the goals of the tournament. I don't say that lightly, because it was like a 3v1, even though you only took on the same player twice. You count the keeper, you count the centre back that was covering the space that made you go left, essentially, and you didn't have the option to go right. Can you take me through that? Like, in your mind, it looked from the outside very calculated, and you're like playing the rhythm of the defender and moving with the ball. But when that's happening in real speed, your mind doesn't have time to, like, that's pure instinct. Like, what were you thinking when you got that ball? Because you kind of had a huge part of space, but
yeah. So how I come to even that situation when Riley slipped me through, there was a few times in the first half where when they had controlled possession, their fullbacks were getting really high and they're almost like wing backs. And we had a few times where we won the ball and we really could have had them on the counter and just broke down. But there was so many occasions where if the ball ended up that way, like I was so on, like the only one left was maybe one centre back. And I just, like, I've looked, obviously seen the goal, and I think I was on the edge of the box, our box, and we won it. And I can't remember who won it, but then I just sort of started attacking, going forward, and sort of saw that we still had the ball. I think Juki dropped it off to someone, and then he played it out to Riley. And by that time, I was running pretty quick. So
yeah,
once I got the ball, I actually looked up briefly. So I took my first touch, and then I looked up to my right and just saw there was like no one there. So I was like, all right, I gotta.
So you thought you were 1-on-1 when you just passed halfway?
Like, I knew there was defenders, but I was looking up to see if there was anyone I could pass to.
Ah, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so you knew you were on
because
your
I was
own.
on the left, and I was just trying to look up to see if anyone was making a run to play on the right.
Yeah.
And there was no one, so I was like, well, I've got to go for it. And I play left at City and I like to come inside. It's always a good option. Obviously, you can go down the left as well, but majority of the time you go down the left to probably cross the ball. And once I saw no one was there, my first initial thing was to go inside and shoot. But the defender sort of already was heading that way, and my touch wasn't that far out where I could just shoot. And then I just,
But you took the guy to the cleaners, man. Honestly, bro, that guy's still on the pitch. Like, was it cut right, then back on your left, and he's just boom, boom, just dropped. He's just like chasing shadows.
Yeah, it was
a top defender too. I forget his name, but he's a top defender.
Yeah,
I think Christensen was behind him, and then I can't remember the guy's name. But
he was the left back I played against him the whole game.
Yeah, and then Schmeichel as well.
But yeah, it's one of those things where it just all worked out perfect because it looks nice and it's a great goal because it goes through his legs, but on another day it hits his leg and nothing happens.
Yeah.
So yeah, when it went through his legs, I didn't hit it like massively cleanly, so I was sort of like hard enough, but not that hard. So I already had seen it was going over the line before it did, and then I was buzzing. You obviously saw I was punching my chest and losing it, and then the boys all came over. That's the thing, like you see how close we are, like even the bench players are going more nuts than the players on the field, and it's cool.
Which people don't. That's a big thing because no one likes to go. Don't get me wrong. Like people want to be in the World Cup squad, but no one likes to go to Qatar for a holiday and sit. But I felt like even the bench were invested. Everyone was kind of getting minutes as well. That's sometimes for you, and I think maybe you can understand this, obviously being in your position. But as much as that goal will be memorable to you, probably the moment you gave to your teammates to celebrate with and all that sort of stuff was equally as powerful, let alone what Australia felt about it. Like you see all the boys just erupting off a moment like that. That's kind of what makes football good, hey?
Yeah, and look, obviously I was the one that scored the goal. And it's, an important goal, and it's one of those ones that will probably be watched over in years to come. But, the credit goes to obviously the whole team because of how hard everyone worked, and, Chuki scored for us to score, to beat Tunisia. And
just a freak header,
like a goal that
I don't know many people that could score that. Yeah, I don't know anyone that could potentially do that. Maybe Giroud, but like so random.
And it was just, it's a moment that, it's the second time in history that we've gone out of the group. So for all of us, it's history. It's something that we'll always be a part of. And like I'm obviously the guy that scored the goal. So, the hero in that sense, but I just see it as, it was the team's success and everyone deserves the credit, really.
It's different when you're in the four walls, I think, you have that view, but from the outside, people just look at who scored.
Yeah, and it's always like that, isn't it?
It's always the case.
It's always a talking point or a highlight of a game, and that's the way the world works.
That's why Jamie McLaren pisses me off, because he can have stinkers and then it hits his knee and he gets the 1-0 winner and he's the one getting all the plaudits, and I play 10 out of 10. I'm like, how the fuck does that work? But that's football, mate. Shout out Jamie as well. Two-time.
It's a skill.
He's an artist,
talent,
man.
And
he's an artist.
I wish I could do it because, but even not just that. Like Macca's work rate off the ball, it's not noticed. He works really hard, and his data in games is massive. He runs a lot, and he sets up the defensive pressing or whatever it may be. City does anyway, and I personally, in that position, would hate life. I like to be involved in the game. I like to be in touches, and if I'm not, I'm getting frustrated or I start moving somewhere else to try to get the ball. But he's done his whole career, and I think in his mind, even though he's maybe had 4 or 5 touches in the game, he probably thinks like, I'm still going to get a chance.
He just judges that. That's what he thinks. Yeah, that's why he's so good at what he does, because he doesn't get too caught in, I'm not playing well, because he always thinks he can make a difference. The thing for me about Jamie that's the most dangerous is the brain power defenders have to have when he's playing, which also helps people like yourself and Naboo and Tilly get in the game, because they're so concerned about what he's doing, where he's going when he doesn't have the ball, that it must be like by the end of the game, some of those guys must be like, fuck, that's over. Because he's just, he's constantly on the move. He's annoying.
Well, the thing is they can feel like, I'm having a great game. He's done nothing.
Yeah.
And then he scores, and at the end of the game, he's scored a goal and they're defending him. So it looks like he didn't do your job.
Correct.
And it's like it happens over and over again. So it's like it's not luck.
Yeah, it's not luck. It was his second highest score. Me and him have a running bet. I hope he doesn't mind me say this, but if he beats Barisha this year, it's dinner at Rockpool on me. If he doesn't, he's taking me to Nobu. So
How many has he got to get?
I think it was 21 or 22 at the start of the year, and then I don't know how he flew out of the blocks. So I don't know what he's at now.
Goals already.
Yeah, so I think it's like 15 or something, maybe 10 or 15, which for him,
9, yeah.
he scored 25 goal seasons heaps of times, so it's definitely doable.
Yeah.
With finals too, like you count that. So
possible. I mean, you're probably not going to get a season where you beat Victory 7-0 again. So,
nah, that's true.
but yeah, he'll always score, and he always does. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's good for us, and it's massively important for us. And it's a weapon, really.
Yeah, it is.
Like, he just knows where to be.
Yeah, so you can't teach it.
No.
It's like Haaland, you can't teach it. Just a last question on the World Cup, because obviously the way we went out was, as you mentioned, actually 2 times we got out of the group, both times we've lost the world champions, which is the irony in that, Italy and Argentina. But just want to go through that quickly, that Argentina game, like the quality. So I actually think wasn't much you could really knock us on. They were it's just at the highest level, like, it's just little moments that make the big difference, and obviously Messi and so forth. But what was that experience like playing against them? And was the jump in quality noticeable, or was it all sort of just the gravity of, being in the knockout stages?
Yeah, look, I thought we did pretty good against them for majority of the game. Obviously, and up until their goal, like, we limited them to nearly nothing. And obviously then Messi appears and he scores the goal he scored over 200 times in his career.
Yeah, literally.
Through the legs, pass.
Coming from that left flank. Just like, it's like people just feed him like an unnecessary pass, knowing that one's coming.
And I don't even know if how it ended up at him, because I remember it sort of got shot into him quite hard.
Yeah.
I thought he tried to take a touch, but it's just gone into Messi's, because Messi was like running in quite quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought we did really well against them. And then obviously they had a few chances more at the end, because we were obviously trying to push to try to get, we lose, we're out. So we got to try something. But after the game, like, we were speaking about it, and some of the players were like, they're not going to win the World Cup.
Really?
Because, if Messi doesn't do anything, they're not that great. But I was thinking to myself, like, yeah, they don't really create a lot of chances, and they don't really put massive pressure on you and just get chance after chance. But one thing about them was, it's like their passing and like their composure in their own half to keep possession and just play out of pressure was like really better than
Top
France.
level. Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
None of them really made a technical error, took a heavy touch. They got a really good midfield, and their centre backs were like really, really strong, really aggressive. And they thought Netherlands would beat, like some of the boys were saying Netherlands would beat them.
Netherlands were on fire at that time at the tournament.
But I wanted to, and like once they got to the final, I thought they could go like a decent amount in the tournament. And then once they got to the final, everyone was like France. But it's another thing. It's like, for me, Argentina's a better team. France has better individuals in terms of like moments.
That's interesting.
Dembele, Mbappe,
yeah,
Griezmann and stuff. And Argentina, they just collectively are like really, really strong, like aggressive.
Yeah, they're pricks.
Don't create too much. Don't let the other team create too many chances, and it feels like it's a build-up of waiting for Messi to do something. And it sort of is. And then they've got like a couple of boys that just like run like dogs, like that. DePaul is really good.
Paredes, those kind of guys. Hey,
yeah. And I wanted them to win in the end because I wanted Messi to win a World Cup.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I think he's the best player ever. But yeah, I thought, although like we held our own against them and did pretty well, we had that last chance, last kick of the game, we can go into extra time. And at that time I was like, if we went to extra time, I think we win.
Yeah.
But now looking like back over the rest of the tournament, they were so good in extra time, and
penalties,
unbelievable in penalties.
Yeah, Martinez, the keeper's like, he's made for it, isn't it?
maybe we wouldn't have.
I want to ask you the same question I did about Mbappe with Messi, because obviously now I think the GOAT debate's got to be almost nailed in the coffin after the World Cup. But for you, I think, have you played against Messi before this?
No.
You've played first time, which is because you played almost against everyone. But for you, up close and personal, what was the thing that stood out the most?
We sort of like reviewed. Obviously, we reviewed Argentina, but we sort of reviewed what he does. So, and it's funny. I've seen like some social media stuff where people try to break down like what he does, and it's like there was a stat in one of the games he walked like 4.5 km. But it's like they say he's just reviewing everything that's going on in the game, what areas he can be in to do something, and he sort of, when they go forward and they attack, so many times, like he obviously just drifts where he wants. And tries to find space to then do something. And he lets the game go like past him. And then he always gets in like a pocket where the ball gets played back to him.
Yeah.
And you've seen it like when he was at Barca, he does it at PSG. That when he's on the right and he clips it to the back post, and it was so many times to Jordi Alba to then.
Yeah.
And yeah, he just, because he's so like sort of just drifts anywhere, you can't defend it.
Yeah.
And if he's playing as a striker or a winger and he's just going to the midfield, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Your centre back can't follow him.
Yeah.
So our thing was like, okay, when he gets it, like we try to shut him off, and then whoever else has it, just let him have it. And we did all right. Like he picked it up in the game in the first half. He picked it up a few times in the middle, and he tried some things, and we covered it quite well. But then his goal. He scores a goal out of nothing. And then once the game opened up, he was the one basically creating all the chances at the end, because as soon as there's space, he just drives into it, and the ball doesn't leave his feet.
For random question, but who caused the most sort of brain power out of the Socceroos camp and the back four, let's say, out of playing against Mbappe or Messi? Who was the one that sort of like you had to focus so much more on because of how lethal they were, if that's even a fair question to ask?
We didn't really speak about that. We just sort of like our tactical game plan was almost, we actually try to like close the middle, because we saw a lot of footage where they get like 4 or 5 players behind the ball, and they just try to drag players out to then play a ball through the middle, flick around the corner, and then that's when they do their thing. So for us, it was just like keep the center compact, and then just try to double up and stuff on the wings.
Yeah.
And you know what? Like against them as well, the first 30 minutes was really good, and sort of drifted away from us a bit. But in saying that as well, like first goal was a second phase corner, which we should have done better, and they scored, I think, 2 crosses.
Yeah. So
it was just like very, very minor things that like
made big differences.
Concede goals. But open play, like they didn't really tear us apart. But there was a couple of occasions in the first half where Dembele just put on the burners, and Mbappe, and they're just so fast. Him himself as well, and Dembele, he's very like they're tall,
similar build, eh?
And they're like the whole French team was massive. Rabiot was huge.
Yeah, he's a big guy,
and he looks biggish, but not as big as he looks.
Towering.
Like when you're next to him.
Even that Tukumani, he seems like a solid lad too.
Yeah, and even like
Giroud
is massive.
Yeah, the back four, they're all big
boys. Yeah, Konate's very big.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just
hell of a tournament, bro. That was a hell of a segment. It was the longest segment we've ever had. How could we not though? We had to rinse it all out. But just want to go. This is going to take a change of speed, but. How has it been back in the A-League now? Obviously, you spent 10 years almost abroad, really, and this is your second season now. How's it feeling? How's it been?
It's good.
Anything changed?
It's hard to say, because obviously I'm at a different club, and
yeah, well, that's true.
I think in general, like everything's improved across, clubs internally, facilities and stuff, everything's sort of growing. It's hard to say because obviously when I first came back, COVID, fans, even when fans sort of started coming back, it wasn't all the fans because some were probably too scared to come out. It affected a lot of people's opinion on if it was safe. But it's good. I mean, for me it was, and when I was overseas, I always said to myself, I want to be playing all the time. And if I'm not at a club, if I'm not sort of like playing that much, then I want to move on regardless of where it is. So my first season in Germany was at Mönchengladbach. I had 10 appearances, which was very good for, an unknown Aussie.
How old were you then? You'd been 20? Were you younger?
20, turning 21, yeah.
Yeah. You're a kid still, really.
And I was supposed to be there as a first team trainer and mostly play second team.
Yeah. Which is still, for people that don't know, that's a top level still. It's pretty
it's
pretty good standard second level in Germany.
But just to be training with the first team with the players and stuff was a massive step from Adelaide, obviously. So, but I ended up being on the bench for the first game because I had a good preseason, and then I basically was on the bench most of the season. But having 10 appearances off the bench, it was it was good. Yeah. But I still wanted to be playing, and I'm sort of just drifted totally off A-League and went straight.
No, that's good
overseas.
Though, because there's a lot of questions I have because you played for what? Mönchengladbach, Hertha Berlin, and was it Frankfurt?
FSV Frankfurt was the second club, which was the second league team. Then I went from there to Ingolstadt. Okay. And then Ingolstadt to Berlin.
Big clubs, man.
Well, FC Frankfurt isn't the Frankfurt.
Yeah, no, I know. But Hertha Berlin and Mönchengladbach. Yeah. Jesus.
Good clubs, yeah. And
big clubs.
To be fair, when I went over there, I didn't even know because I started playing football when I was 11.
Yeah, I heard you're not really like, you weren't a football head, like particularly at Adelaide.
No, my family was AFL, all AFL. Yeah. And I just started playing because I played with friends at school and enjoyed it. So, yeah. When I went over there, I didn't even know who, this is probably terrible, but the only team I really knew was Bayern Munich. I didn't even know who Dortmund was.
Oh my God.
So that's how much I knew about football.
Do you reckon that, like, now you've reviewed, because this is why, when you say you're drifting, this is why it was helpful, because obviously we see so many young players go over and not be able to progress and stay and play at a high level and get that consistency. It might sound stupid, but do you think being a little bit naive to how big what you were walking into may have helped you a little bit, because you wouldn't have been overawed, you didn't give it too much thought, you're like obviously the laid back vibe you have?
Yeah, maybe. Definitely could have helped. And, going back to what you said with the players go over there and sort of lose their way and don't really, get their foot in the door and often go to another league, a lower level standard league, or even come back to the A-League. It is hard at the start. It's very hard.
What was the hard?
The first, the hardest part of going to Germany was the start.
Really?
Because you got no idea about anything. It's a totally different country. You don't speak the language. You're starting from scratch in everything you do. And when you first start, you don't have like a good relationship with any of the players, and not all of them give you a time of day. It takes time. And yeah, I just toughened. Like I went through it and battled it out, and because I trained well, or that was always a good trainer when I was younger, and I think me changing from first league, even though I had made 10 appearances, which was a good accomplishment, my first season, me going to the second league, I think was a very good step, because I gave myself that opportunity to be competing with players where I could play from the start in the starting 11 when I was playing well or performing. So yeah, it's a tough one. I think mentality is massive when you go overseas, and as I said before, you need to be confident and just believe in what you're doing, because when you don't, you're just not the same player. And that's probably occurred to a lot of players, because there's been, in my opinion, plenty more better technical and everything else footballers than me. You know, I've obviously when I was young, I had my weapons. But there's been better ones that have gone over and not made it. And, you know, there's a lot of things that come into the reason why. And that's, you know, mentality, if you can hack it, homesick, and those type of things. And I managed with it pretty good. And maybe that's because I'm a bit whatever.
Yeah, just laid back as fuck. Yeah. Might even call that this episode.
You ask everyone.
You know, I've obviously no mutual friends. I never knew you this laid back. It's actually quite amazing. But it also tells me why I think because I understand in that world, like, for instance, when I went overseas at a young age and was trialing at clubs or even in the A-League, man, I was so intense. Do you know what I mean? Because I really wanted it. But that actually counteracted. So that's why I think I can understand for you that, and it's not to say that you didn't care or you didn't work hard by any stretch, but that mentality is so pivotal for big moments. Sometimes you just need to be like calm, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And it worked out for me. Obviously, for some it might not. Yeah, I don't know. I just never really cared about who I played against, who I come up against, or the occasion. It was just go out there and do it.
Garang Qual strikes me like a bit like that too. What would be like, you might have given him advice, but because I always fear, I was like, fuck, don't get me wrong, how good is it going to Newcastle? But I'm like fearful, like 17, it's a big thing. Like, I don't want to see him back here at 23. And like, we've seen it so many times with players you've played with. What would be sort of your advice for him going into that situation? Because it's a massive, massive step.
Yeah, it is massive. And I'm not really sure. I don't want to say something that's wrong, but I'm pretty sure when he first goes over, he's not able to play.
He's going on loan or something, right?
So he's supposed to be going straight on loan. So it really depends on where he goes on loan. And I hope for his sake it's somewhere where he can realistically play games. And you don't want to fall into a trap of going to a big club where you're not even going to get a chance unless you really, really do something amazing. And one thing a lot of people probably know, but us players that have gone over know more than anyone, is the respect for Australian players is, you know, you need to do almost 3-4 times as much to first gain that. They don't really take you serious in the sense that if they can trust you, if you can do a job, and that goes for anything. I think for a long time it was the same with coaches, and now it's getting better because of the success of Ange and the success of Kevin Muscat now. And that's, so I really hope for him he goes somewhere where, you know, he will get the opportunities to play, and then it's obviously up to him to perform, because you don't want to go somewhere where you don't even get to step on the pitch to maybe show it, because he's a player that's a little bit, when I was younger, I was very raw, and he's a moments player.
Yes, it's very similar.
He creates things out of nothing. And it's not always easy to do that in a training environment, because, you know, possession drill, it's different.
It's regimented, it's structured.
When I was young, I was honking at that stuff. But on a field, like, I could always create chances and stuff like that. And just always like, look, people were like watching me play, because every time I got the ball, I just try to dribble people.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's very similar. So yeah, I just hope that wherever he goes, he gets that opportunity, and then it's just up to him, really.
Yeah, I think your squad, Melbourne City, naturally is always probably the last since you've come back, but they've always had some of the best players in the competition. Have you been impressed with like the standard in training and so forth?
Yeah, very impressed. I didn't know what to expect coming back because I'd been away for so long. I did know the training sort of way they go about training with the intensity and the workload and the whole setup with all the staff was, you know, as good as overseas. So that was very attractive to me in the sense that I knew that I would still be at a good level. You know, if you go to like a Dubai or any of those type of leagues, it's very slow paced, and they probably don't train hard.
Yeah.
So I definitely was, that really attracted me to go to City.
Because you're a Melbourne boy too. I don't know if everyone would know that listening. Shout out
Yeah.
the Valley family too for the assist here, Nick and Johnny, you crazy bastards. But we love you. But yeah, you're a Melbourne boy, obviously too.
Yeah.
You got little ones as well now?
Got 3, yeah.
Yeah, so was that one of the reasons as well to come home?
Yeah, well, so my wife's from Germany.
Right.
We met over there, and obviously we had the 2 kids, and she was pregnant with the third. And when I was like, my contract was ending at Berlin, and I wanted to move on anyway because, going back to when I always said I want to be playing, and if I'm not, I'll move on. The last season, I didn't really play much. There was a new investor, and they spent a lot of money on players, and it didn't really matter what I did. Like, I couldn't get in. Just, those players, they obviously spent a lot of money on them, so they had to
play
them to try to, get something out of them. Even though we weren't playing, that well, and, we're fighting at the bottom of the league. But in that sort of circumstance, years back, I would have tried to get out straight away. But, with the kids, my daughter was kinder, my son was a baby. So I sort of stayed because it was easier with the family. So just to see out my contract in Berlin, because we had already had everything set up. And funny, when I was talking to City and wanting to come back, COVID was not here. There was nothing. Yeah. And there was COVID in Germany. And my missus was like, she wants to get out of here now. Like, she's had enough. And we sort of said, all right, if we get back to Australia, we want to have my daughter start school from the beginning. We don't want to come in like 2 years in where the group knows each other and she's just the new kid.
Even the language barrier maybe too, or probably.
Yeah, well, my daughter always understood because I only speak English to her.
Okay.
But she never spoke.
Okay.
But now she's the other way. She doesn't care for speaking German and she speaks English. But yeah, I was very surprised with the standard, just like the intensity of the sessions, the possession drills, bopping it around. And to be fair, I didn't come the fittest because I had been in Dubai waiting for our visas for my family and getting that approved. So I was in Dubai for like 2-3 weeks. And then I came into quarantine for 2 weeks. So I was 5 weeks basically doing nothing. And I was cooked the first few weeks.
Yeah. It was like, Jesus Christ, this Leckie guy's overrated.
But yeah, Melbourne City.
It's proper there, eh? I don't think it's proper professional.
I mean, the German preseason is hard because of the amount of training sessions they do, like 2 times a day or 3 times a day.
Right.
Here it's not like that, but the actual sessions are harder.
Yeah, okay.
Like pushing the limits when you're real proper like dead.
Yeah.
And yeah, obviously, we're one of the top teams in the league for the previous years, and we play a possession style. But that was another thing. I always said I wanted to come back and compete for trophies and stuff, and have that winning mentality and that sort of dominating style of play. And so far, it's been good.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I only got a few more questions before we wrap this up, but I can't go past, obviously, the derby and obviously the craziness of what happened over the past few weeks. And obviously, we'll caveat this that, like, none of us support what happened in the game. It was pretty crazy. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it in Australian football, but just like taking from on the field perspective, like, what the fuck was that like for you? It must have just been like it went 0 to 100 real quick, and then next thing you know, Glover's running off injured, the rest covered in ash, like can't even see.
Yeah, it was crazy. And obviously, it was one of we had seen the previous games that had been played, and the whole walking out in the 20th minute. So we were expecting that. We had feedback from the club saying that our fans will do the same, and no doubt Vicky.
Oh, so City fans were going to walk out after 20 as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. And then the flares sort of came out, and we're just like, all right, maybe like they'll throw the flares and then they'll want to stay because of the game, derby. So that could be like their sign or their show of emotion. And then, I don't know what happened. I think I was at the halfway line and suddenly I just saw the barrier go down and people like storming on the pitch. And then still I was just like, they're going to run on and that's it.
Yeah.
I didn't know the reasoning of them running on the field. Like, what was there? I thought, okay, maybe this is what they're doing to like protest the situation. And then as soon as I was like there and I actually saw the bucket hit Glover, then I sort of ran over to be like, what's going on here? We've got to get him out of there.
Mm.
And by then he was sort of grabbed. They'd grabbed him and got him away. I think it was our goalkeeper coach. And then actually a bucket came towards me. But
I heard something hit you.
Yeah, it didn't
Is that
hit
true?
me. So a bucket was like higher up, and I sort of had my eye on it so I could see, and it was sort of spinning, and I saw there was no sand in it because it was the sand.
Yeah, that's why it's so heavy.
Because it's normally to put the flares out,
and it went on the ref's head. That's why they hit.
So it's hit Glover, and I think all the sand went into maybe the bucket hit the ref off Glover.
Yeah,
but there was one coming to me. But as it was spinning, I could see it was like empty. So I was like, all right, it's not going to be too heavy. So I just sort of slapped it away.
Macho, man.
And then I was like there in the mix with the fans, like running on. And there was actually one victory fan, and he was like, Leckie, get out of here. Like, go. Yeah. Like, sort of protecting me a little bit.
Yeah, because you put us through past Denmark, mate. That's why you brought some credits around the country.
Yeah, what should we say? It's obviously not what we want to see, is it?
Nah. How is Glover? He's like, I heard he's got stitches across the face. Like, is he able to play, or is he good, like still in doubt? Or
he's okay. He's in good spirits, completely normal, back to normal. It's it sort of bulged up really quickly, and then when he went inside, I think he got stitches. I don't know how many, and then someone said, because before we knew what was going to happen with the game, whether it was going to get called off or not, they were asking our opinion as players, like, regardless of their decision, do we want to play or not want to play? Glover was the first one to be asked, and he's like, yeah, I'm sweet. I'm good.
Fuck.
And then we were like, all right, well, if Glover's ready and he's good, we're all good. Like,
how was he going to play with that cup, bro? What are they going to do? Strap his face so he couldn't see? 5-10
minutes on, he sort of had symptoms of being a bit rattled, a bit concussed. So we're like, all right, well, we're not going to play. We're not going to make a sub because of what's happened.
Yeah, the disadvantage. Yeah.
And then I think regardless of what our decision was, I think it was getting called off anyway.
Yeah.
But it was crazy. I mean, it's not what you want to see, is it? You don't want to see
post
fans,
the World Cup too, bro. Like, everything was going, you know what I mean?
And that's the biggest problem. I think the World Cup really brings everyone together, like even people that are sort of into the football.
On the fence.
When it's World Cup time, like everyone gets around it. And yeah, it's just sort of diminished everything. So it was like a time to capitalize.
Yeah, great.
And now it's just like, it's not a good situation. So hopefully something like that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Well, I don't know if it's been come out yet. I'm sure it will when this podcast does, but I reckon you guys are getting some points for that, and Victory's in a bit of trouble, no doubt. Which is a shame.
Thing we were like, well, what's gonna come of it?
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens, but in my opinion, we have to get the points. Like,
I think that's a given. Like 3-0. You guys get the points.
We're winning, it was their fans.
Yeah.
And they really got to sort of find a punishment where the fans don't do something like that again. Because if the punishment's not big, then they think they can do it all the time.
I think in this, like, before we move on, I think generally there's jail time for that. I think it's like an assault. Yeah, I think so. I generally think it can be. I don't know who administers that, whether that's the APL or like Glover has, if he wants to press charges or the ref or whatever. But I think that's where Victory's taking it.
Right.
To make a stand, because it's like, it's not really a fan of football if you're doing that, you know what I mean? Like,
Well, I think
you're thinking differently about the game.
seeing the footage, I think once the bucket actually hit him, the guy was like, fuck.
Yeah,
What have I done?
apparently there's a photo of a guy wincing it through it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He probably didn't expect it to hit him like that.
yeah. Anyway, we'll go to this last question because this is something we always ask the guests on the show, and I think it'll be a perfect question for you with sort of your career and the heights that you've hit of late. But I attest 3 sort of traits to anyone successful in sports or business, and I just want you to pick one of the 3 that they're all important, but one of the 3 that for you was without you wouldn't have been able to be, the Matt Leckie you are today. So it's out of resilience, drive, or ambition. Those cold nights in Germany by yourself, bro, which one were you leaning on?
I probably would say it's hard to say, like throughout the whole broad of my career, but I think the massive, most important part of it was the start when I went overseas.
Mm.
And to sum up that, or to best describe it, was probably the resilience to
Okay.
get through it all.
Yeah.
Because that's sort of what can make or break your overseas journey. And in the end, I got through it, and then, I was there for 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is just getting there and staying there.
Yeah. Do you know what? As a football person, I don't know if maybe people think this at all, but I think with all you've achieved as a football person, my thing is for you would be staying in Germany for 10 years. I think that's bigger than anything you've achieved because that's so hard. That's a day-to-day job. Like, that's different country. It's difficult. You're from the eastern suburbs of Melbourne, so it's not like where you've lived. So I reckon that's very truthful.
Yeah. But, you get used to it, and after a couple of years, it's like you're home away from home, or you sort of forget how it was at home.
Mm.
As I said, I met my wife, and then we got married. We had our kids, and we created our little family. So
Yeah.
then you sort of like focus on your everyday life with them, and then it just made like coming back extra special because it was like, I'm going to be in town for 2 weeks, so it's like everything gets dropped.
Yeah.
My mates taking off time at work,
Hyper fun period.
just always doing stuff. And now, like, I was like, for the last 10 years, that's how it's been. So, like, when I get back, it's going to be weird. And now it's just like, they have their lives, I have mine. We still catch up, but like, there's just so much going on.
Mm.
So, it would be impossible to hold off the 2 weeks what we were doing to doing that in everyday life.
Yeah, with 3 kids, I bet.
Yeah. But, it's really how you look at it. It's your mindset going into it. Like, I always knew that 2 weeks I'd come back on holiday to see friends, family, how good it was going to be.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times I came back in over Christmas, so it was like good weather.
Yeah, best.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, Lex, bro, thank you for the memories of the World Cup, all the Socceroos. Looking forward for the rest of the A-League season. I think you're flying fit, mate. You're still in good shape. So appreciate you coming on the podcast, bro. It's been great.
Yeah, it's been cool, man. And shout out to the bus.
Yeah.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details. Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details. Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.